it's a privilege to try to report back to you your thoughts. I do it with a great deal of humility because I can only report back a fraction of what has been important. Each of you will have his or her own list, and I am here learning as much as you. I'm also concerned that what I will say won't do justice to some of the presentations. And because of that, I'm not going to report on all of the presentations. The power of some of the presentations I will leave to you undistilled and unfiltered by my own remarks. So when we began talking about this a year ago, we were wondering whether there was some power in the law that had been overlooked. Could we go looking for some power that might assist in the resolution of some of the problems in the law? So we heard a lot of positives, positives that come from the numbers. So much has been accomplished. And the numbers that Susan Boyd described tell the story. And there also have been a number of changes in the profession. We have to acknowledge those changes in the judiciary, changes in judicial education, changes in how we grant access to the courts. And Hester Lessard was making that point in this group just before before I began. And I know that Marie Deschamps has something to say about that, and I hope she'll add her voice to mine at the end. And we also can't forget that there is interest shown by the leaders in the profession present in this last day and a half, and those who are not present, but who are supportive of this issue. And we also have to reflect on how this conference shows how powerful women's voices are. Now, having said that, we're not here to sing Caesar's praises, obviously. We're here to critique and to find and look for the overlooked power in the law. We wouldn't be lawyers and judges if we don't criticize. We must criticize. So to pick up on Susan Boyd's question, do the positive numbers tell the whole story? And we know, particularly we've been taught in the last day and a half, that they don't. We have to be clear about what the central problems are, as has been disclosed in this seminar and expanded upon eloquently by many of the speakers. First, the lack of representation of women and visible minorities in private practice and in the upper echelons of the legal profession, which means everyone's story is not being told. Secondly, the business model appears to be crushing all lawyers and may in particular preclude the participation of women and some visible minorities. Third, the dispute resolution model or legal mentality of battle may be destructive to us all, and in particular to women and visible minorities. So those are the problems that were identified. And then let's get down and be even more specific. The criticism of the billable hour, the criticism of law firm structures, the criticism of firm policies, all as instruments of exclusion. And that thinking like a lawyer, where strategy and legal structure prevent lawyers and clients from obtaining true justice. Now, here we have to pause for the realism check. And that, Andrew and Beth made this point very well. Law is a business. The law offers promise and hope, and that's always there, but we must earn a livelihood. I loved Beth Symes' comment about being very careful to do pro bono work, but make sure that it's intentional. On the other hand, the realism check masks another reality. And that's, as Professor Krieger said, an incoherence, the disconnection leads to high rates of depression and addiction, and that's part of the reality too. So Then we come to solutions. And I actually saw 9 themes of solutions come out of the last day and a half. I can't dwell on them all, but I will list them. There's the solution of redefinition. I'm going to touch upon these in some detail in a moment. There's the solutions that come from innovation, and then from changing the model, seeing change in society as an opportunity, and then a series of themes derived from education. Education to isolate the problem, education to provide the skills, education as an instrument of social change, and then finally recognizing that law is a tool. Law is a tool and a means to enforce respect. So redefinition. What do I mean by that? We must be careful not to accept the status quo or what may be the 20th century model as being the definition of success. We've got to rethink that, or rethink that individually, maybe structurally too, reformulate it and reframe it. Several of the speakers talked about that. And then there's room for innovation. There's room to look for innovation, looking for things not tried or not tried with sufficient thought, or tried when they were tried too early. So, of course, we have Andrew's model, Andrew's discussion, what Andrew was looking for. We also have some things to think about that came out of the small groups, like daycare, and whether perhaps the College of Law and the College of Business could create a business model, use the skills of the students to create a special daycare model that might have a mini Quebec within the downtown core with respect to daycare. Daycare for law firms, law students, law faculty, law staff. Innovations that might come from changing the model. What can we change in the model? And we heard a lot about that. A critical look at the billable hour model, asking ourselves, where did that come from anyway? We didn't start out with the billable hour. That didn't used to be the way we practice law. Why do we practice that law that way now? We heard about specialization in the law, using education there as a tool. Heard about a very realistic look at part-time work. Another look at changes to dispute resolution, looking fundamentally at this thirst for resolution that mediation, collaborative law fill. The discussion about changes to society opening the door to changes in the model, the information age, providing solutions in the way we work, driving change because others may be able to offer what we do better, may force us to look at the model. And then I was particularly struck by what Professor Krieger was saying, that changes to the model in producing better individual health may lead to changes in ethics, which is another area which we all hold dear. Then we come to education. When I was in my small group yesterday, I confessed to an addiction to education as a solution. So I always see in every conference the possibility of solutions through education. So I have 4 themes on education. We know that the changes that have been brought about to date have been brought about largely by education, education within the judiciary, the law schools, and the profession. Because, of course, what we're doing is changing the way people view matters. And how best to change how you view matters than to affect the way you think. And how do you affect the way you think? You affect it by education. So Tom Schonhofer's comments about perhaps re-looking at that articling year and going to a fixed practice year might be useful. It would take the pressure off the law schools, and they could offer more feminist legal theory courses because they wouldn't have to address practice issues. It would prepare lawyers more evenly for the practice of law, which would mean that those who represent the diverse face of students in the college would become mainstream. They could put up their own shingles, confident that they have the same skills that all of the other classmates have. And we saw this theme of education coming up over and over again. Michelle Holland's emphasizing leadership skills and training. Catherine Hensel emphasizing the need for making Section 35 part of every law school class. And she too modeled this honestly held perspective of her people and building capacity through education. Lawrence Krieger, Lynn Jenkins, Marilyn all talked about through knowledge comes power. And each of these presenters talked about additional skills that we could acquire that would untap this overlooked power in the law. Education is critical because it not only shows the problem, and from a better understanding of the problem, we will have the solution, but it gives us the confidence to proceed with new sets of skills. So we celebrate what we want to do here, and I'm sort of coming to a bit of a wrap up here. Where I have arrived at is we celebrate what diversity would bring to the practice of law, what we hope to achieve through diversity. We recognize how rich our profession can be if everyone's experience is part of the mix. And I come back to Catherine Hensel. The experience of Aboriginal peoples can only add to our sense of what is just and fair and how best to resolve disputes that will lead to the most peaceful society possible will increase if we let others in. And I think what Marie Deschamps said last night, she said so well, justice is not just about dispute resolution. She emphasized the phrase access to justice, that you must look at both words. You must look at access, you must look at justice. And from that, there is a great deal that could be said. And I want to reinforce why this subject is so important. We must disabuse ourselves of the notion that it is about us individually. It is about that. If we don't offer good lifelong work for all of our graduates within the profession, that's a tragedy. But if that person doesn't get work because of gender or race or any sort of difference from the mainstream, that's a structural tragedy. And the concern is that if the person of difference doesn't fit well, that the group from where that person comes is not being served by the justice model we have. The core belief, which is where we all started with in law school, is that if we include everyone in the practice of law and in the leadership of the law and in the judiciary, the lives of minorities, the groups who are excluded will improve, along with improving the life of that individual. And that has to be the universal and global goal of why we are looking for the untapped power in the law. And that's why the numbers, the positive numbers that you hear, that Susan started with, must be seriously critiqued, and why we've had this conference. It gives us the opportunity to critique those numbers and to talk about inclusion in society, in the profession, as well as providing diversity of the individuals. And we know there's more power in the law to be had, and I'm going to be asking Marilyn to put her backpack on the table and look for more power in the law. But it's worth the exercise to continue to look for it. Thank you very much for this privilege of acting as your reporter. Thank you.